So you've got a Nissan, and maybe you've run into this little headache of a code, C1710. It pops up on your scanner, and it's more than just some random number. It's your car trying to tell you something's up. In this explainer, we're going to crack that code together and turn that confusion into a solid plan of action. You know the feeling. There it is, that dreaded check engine light, just glaring at you from the dashboard. So you do the right thing, you run a scan, and it spits back C1710. It's frustrating, right? Kind of vague. But don't worry, that's exactly why we're here. Let's break down what this code is really all about and what you can actually do about it. All right, let's think of this as a bit of a detective story. We've got our code, that's our main clue, and now we're going to follow the evidence to solve the mystery of what's really going on under your hood. So, at its heart, the C1710 code points to one specific area, the throttle control system. Now, what is that? Well, it's the system that controls how much air your engine gets when you step on the gas. You can almost think of it as your engine's lungs. It controls the breathing. And right now, that code is telling us it's having a little trouble. A code on a scanner is one thing, but how does this problem actually feel when you're driving? Let's move on to the real-world evidence. You know, the signs and symptoms your car is throwing at you. See, all of these symptoms, they all point back to the engine not breathing correctly. A rough idle or stalling out, that happens because it's getting an inconsistent flow of air when you're at a stop. That loss of power or that sluggish feeling when you accelerate, the engine is kind of suffocating right when you need it to perform. And yet, that worse fuel economy, that's a direct result of your engine working way harder than it should have to. These aren't just random issues, they're all footprints left by that C1710 error. Okay, so we've established the crime scene, and we've gathered the evidence. Now it's time to line up the usual suspects. Where does this problem almost always come from? And here's the good news. We don't have to tear apart the whole car. The problem is almost always hiding out in one key system, that throttle control system we talked about. This really narrows our investigation down and makes finding the culprit a whole lot easier. Our prime suspect, number one, is the throttle body itself. This is basically a valve that opens and closes to let air into the engine when you hit the gas. Over time, it can get all gunked up with carbon, which makes it stick, or its electronic parts can just fail. Either way, it stops the engine from getting the air it needs. Now, let's move on to our second suspect, the throttle position sensor, or TPS. This little guy is the informant. Its job is to tell the car's main computer exactly how much you're pressing the gas pedal. If it starts sending bad information, the computer gets confused and your car's performance takes a nosedive. And finally, we've got suspect number three, the idle air control valve. Its job is to keep the engine breathing nice and steady when your foot is off the gas. Remember that rough idle or stalling symptom we mentioned? A faulty IACV is very often the direct cause of that. Now look, while our main three suspects are the most likely culprits, a good detective always considers other possibilities, right? The problem could also be in the communication lines, like a bad wiring harness. Or maybe another sensor is giving bad info, like the mass airflow sensor. And in some pretty rare cases, it could even be the main computer module itself. Okay, you know the symptoms and you know the suspects. It's time to get practical. Let's pull this all together into a simple diagnostic checklist you can actually follow. Here is your four-step game plan, laid out in a pretty logical order. First, you're going to check the throttle body and its sensor, since they are the most common culprits by far. Second, take a look at the wiring harness. Think of it like checking the phone lines for a bad connection. Third, test the mass airflow sensor to make sure it's not the one feeding bad data. And finally, examine that idle air control valve for any obvious wear and tear that could be causing those idling problems. So you've gone through the checklist, you've followed the clues, and boom, you've found the faulty part. The mystery is solved. So what's the final step to closing this case for good? And here's the best part. Once you've identified the worn out or broken part, the fix is usually pretty straightforward. You just replace it. You're not looking at some super complex, deep engine repair here. It's all about swapping out the bad component for a new one to get your engine breathing properly again. So that C1710 code, it's not so scary after all, is it? It's not just a random number. It's a very specific clue that points you down a logical path. With a clear checklist and a good understanding of the suspects, you absolutely have the power to crack this code. The only question left is, are you ready to go solve your car's mystery?